Welcome back. This is part 5 in the review of Chris Watts' interrogation. And if you've made it this far, that means you survived the long pause that took place in the middle of part 4. I left it in for a few reasons. It could be death for a YouTube video, but I thought it was interesting to leave it in. One, because it's Guy with the Phone Productions, and I don't have any editing skills. I just record it, and if it doesn't go well, I try again. But I left this one in because, first of all, I like real-time narratives. There's a line you don't cross where it becomes unlistenable if the pause is too long or if you're stumbling over yourself too much. Then it's unlistenable. But I thought this was interesting to leave in because it kind of illustrates one of the major themes going through this series, which is the difference between what we say, what we think, and how we act. I was planning to talk about, when we came to the long pause, going into some of the details of Chris murdering Shanann, and I knew what I was going to talk about. I knew that I was going to talk about it, but then when it came to actually doing it, I was thinking, does anyone really want to hear me talk about this? Do I want anyone to hear me talk about this? It's pretty disturbing, and I've never talked about it out loud. I've had many thoughts about it, obviously, but I finally decided to, because when others have covered it, they've done it tastefully, and I've accepted their versions. My heart is in the right place, so let's see how it goes, and I don't have to upload it if I don't like it. So I left it in, and if you made it through that, welcome back. So where we left off in part 4 was Chris's most honest description that he will ever have again of the crime he committed. We found out that before Nicole Atkinson, Bella was the original hero of the case. She checked in on her mom first and disrupted Chris's plans and distracted him into forgetting things so that he eventually led him to getting caught. And we're kind of in the aftermath now of that magic hour where Chris is still talking about, after the emotional talk, why he fell out of love with Shanann and why he wanted a separation. And the first line that stands out after that is where he says, "You don't want to be parading around with a mask on. That's what I don't want." Chris Watts' rule: he does like parading around with a mask on. And make no mistake about it, he enjoys parading around with a mask on. It goes back to what I said in the other video about how he only goes by how people are responding to him in the moment in front of his face. And he has very little insight into what the people are actually thinking about him or feeling. And he enjoys fooling people because he's inherently inferior to most people who have these emotions that he lacks and these insights that he lacks. So him lying to people is his way of leveling the playing field and actually making him feel superior to them, because he thinks he takes what everyone else says at face value and he thinks he's somehow superior because he's saying one thing and he actually means another thing. So it's all about him feeling inferior and making himself superior in his own mind by fooling people, or what he thinks is fooling people. What we see is about as transparent as can be. In everyday life, people just kind of let him get away with it, and there's never been this kind of a spotlight on him where now we see he is a persistent liar, but a bad liar. Liars are losers. Obviously, there's a spectrum of lies. Little white lies that don't hurt anybody, ball busting, those lies are okay. But if you step over the line into where you're manipulating people to take advantage of them, you're a loser, You can't play by the rules that everybody else plays by, so you have to cheat to reach up to everyone else's level because you can't compete with anybody who is being honest, so you have to cheat to make it up to their level. So liars are losers. And that's kind of where Chris is at and what he's showing by this example. And on that note, let's explore Chris's lack of humanity further in this next line here. When Graham once again asks, any idea, is it good or bad? Any idea where they might have gone? And they get to, okay, so we're back to she's decompressing at a friend's house. And Chris's response to that is, hopefully it's someone she trusts, and hopefully they have kids, and hopefully they have car seats so they're safe, or something to that effect. To a parent who actually cares about their kids, for all they know at this point, they've been gone for 2 days. They could be chained up in someone's basement getting their fingers and toes chopped off. That's what would be going through a parent's head who actually cares about their family. And Chris is oblivious to that because to him, that wouldn't matter. That would just be someone else doing his work for him. He would be relieved that they're out of the picture and he doesn't have to deal with them anymore. He would still be putting on this act and looking just as uncaring if it had been someone else responsible instead of him. And that's where his huge blind spot is not understanding how other parents in this situation would actually think and feel. And that's what Graham is taking advantage of here by prying into these things that make no sense to most people who have these human emotions. Chris does have very strong emotions, but it's just, they're all about himself, as we'll get to later. Very, very few emotions for anyone else other than what they can do for him. So, a little thing that just proves that there's no other reason that he would do this other than to get away with murder. Graham asks, did you ever get in contact with Shanann again that morning after she said she was taking the kids to a friend's house? And Chris mentions how, well, I forgot what time it was, but it was shortly after he disposed of his family. He said, yeah, I texted her around 8 or 9 just to see where she's at. And that's what the text showed in the discovery. The text was just, hey, where you at? Something very careless like that. It's a calm, prepared answer. And there's only one reason he would do that. If he really was what he was trying to pretend to be in the prison interview later on, or Letters from Christopher, just this loving family man who was devastated by the horrible mistake he made, why 1 hour later would he be texting, where are you at, Shanann? For enjoyment. He would do it for enjoyment. That's the only other reason. But the main primary reason is to cover his tracks. Neighbor Nate summarized all of Chris's behavior throughout this entire time of the crime and trying to cover it up in one phrase when he said, he doesn't look worried. He looks like he's covering his tracks. And that sums up his entire behavior throughout this whole thing. Another example of that is when Graham asks about the phone that Nick found. By the way, Nick is another ancillary hero to this. You would think a teenager would have his mind on other things and be like, oh, come on, Mom. But Nick was a teenager and he was right there with everyone else looking at the adults like, dude, you guys see how he's acting, right? Are you going to do something about this? You can see it in the body cam footage. And Nick is the one who was looking around and he found Shanann's phone stuffed into the couch because Chris ran upstairs after he went into the house first that morning, or that afternoon when the cops and Nicole and her 2 kids were there waiting for him to come back from work to the scene of the crime, as we find out. Nicole Atkinson's son Nick is the one who found the phone, and Graham asks Chris in this interrogation, why was the phone turned off? And Chris says, I have no clue. Why was it turned off? Why was it not on her? So we know the answer is because he turned it off before he killed her, so there would be no detection of his crime. And that when he went into the house first, later that day, after the kids had distracted him into forgetting his stuff at the house, the phone being one of those things, one of the things he did in that minute he was alone in the house was he ran upstairs and stuffed the phone into the couch to try to hide it from them. But then Hero Nick found it. And now Chris is just left with this surface statement, hoping that Graham doesn't dig into it any deeper. I have no clue. Because, of course, it makes no sense for Shanann, whose whole career and most of her life is on her phone, to just turn it off and stuff it into a couch and then takes the kids and leave. And then we come to a very revealing moment into Chris's mindset. His defenses are starting to go up at this point because Graham is giving him some stares. Chris will give his short, close the door answer on one of Graham's questions, and then Graham will just look at him for a little while, kind of imploring him to continue as a normal father and husband full of human emotions would. And Chris just stares back at him because he has nothing to say. But Chris is starting to get a little suspicious of these stares and these follow-up questions, and his defenses are starting to come up. And one of these examples that reveals Chris's mindset is when Graham is asking about Nicole Atkinson and Nick. Any suspicion about them, Chris? Why they would be there and why they would be finding the phone? And Chris says, no, they're showing their deep concern. I don't think they'd be capable of that. And this is just semantics, but we really need to stop referring to murderers and these horrible criminals as what they are capable of. They're actually, if you're going to use the word capable, you should say that they are incapable of dealing with the problems that everybody else deals with on a daily basis. These people are incapable of handling those in a moral, responsible way that most of us do, so they resort to the lowest common denominator, the simplest form of a solution, which is murder or some other crime. Isaac Asimov had that good quote back in the 40s of violence is the refuge of an idiot. And that's kind of true. It's the lowest common denominator for a living being is to just, you can't think of a way out of it. You can't cooperate. You don't have the skills to get along or make a deal. So just kill them. Just kill them. And it's not that we see what these people are capable of. We're seeing the lows that they're willing to sink to because they are incapable of doing the things that regular people are capable of doing. We are all capable of handling these problems, as tough as they may be. And these murderers and other heartless criminals are incapable of doing those normal human things. They're not superhumans capable of extraordinary actions. They're subhuman, incapable of being regular humans. Okay, we're getting kind of long here. One more obvious sign that it was pre-planned and he put a lot of forethought into this plan is finding her wedding ring, how she took it off and left it on the table. And Chris's reason for that, when Graham asks, is just, I think that was just a result of our conversation. That was probably just a result of our conversation. The emotional conversation where you said everything you were afraid to say while murdering her because she wouldn't be able to respond. And the wedding ring being off of her finger and left behind in the house is a result of that conversation. So By this point, is there any doubt in anyone's mind that this was pre-planned and thought of well in advance? As nonsensical as a lot of the individual details seem, look at how many of them there are, that he had to keep track of all of these nonsensical details, and they all had to at least somewhat line up with reality. And he thought of all of them ahead of time and thought they were going to work. But much like me in part 4, as soon as he got to the act of performing the lines that he pre-planned to say, it didn't come out the way he probably intended. So we'll have to get into more of that later, and I'll see you in the next video.